Military dive teams continue their search for survivors after a shipwreck off South Korea. More planes, ships, and soldiers will soon be on their way to Eastern Europe as NATO responds to the crisis in the Ukraine. The Archbishop of Denver is asking the people of Colorado to take action against a bill that supports abortion rights.
Because there I could see a very holy man talking to holiness itself.
And in our Saints for Today series, one American cardinal gives a behind-the-scenes look at John Paul II. Those stories and much more just ahead on EWTN News Nightly for Wednesday, April 16th, 2014. Good evening. Thank you for joining us tonight on this Wednesday of Holy Week. I'm Brian Patrick, and we begin looking at news now. Emergency crews are continuing their overnight search for almost 300 people still missing after a ferry sank off South Korea's coast. Officials say 174 people were rescued from the ferry after it overturned today. Service teams have been using floodlights and flares tonight searching the vessel for passengers. 6 people are thought to have died and dozens more have been injured. Authorities still don't know what caused the ship to turn over. Many on board were high school students on a trip to Holiday Island. The eastern regions of Ukraine are in turmoil as pro-Russian insurgents are in control of government buildings in at least 9 cities. Members of the pro-Russian militia commandeered 6 Ukrainian armored vehicles today, hoisting Russian flags over them. High-level talks in Geneva are slated for Thursday between top diplomats from Ukraine, Russia, the U.S., and the European Union. But given those parties' differences, a compromise may be difficult to achieve. Meanwhile, in Brussels, NATO has announced it is immediately strengthening its military footprint along Ukraine's eastern border.
We will have more planes in the air, more ships on the water, and more readiness on the land.
The alliance estimates Russia has amassed about 40,000 troops in parts of Ukraine. Secretary General Anders Rasmussen said the new NATO deployments are about deterrence and de-escalation of Russian aggression. The man accused of carrying a backpack containing a rice cooker near the Boston Marathon finish line last night appeared in court this morning. A Boston judge ordered 25-year-old Kevin Kayvon Edson to be held on a $100,000 bond. His mom says her son has bipolar disorder. He was stopped late Tuesday by an officer who saw him acting suspiciously, walking barefoot down the middle of a street, veiled in black, in pouring rain. It was a year ago yesterday. 2 bombs made from pressure cookers killed 3 and injured dozens at the marathon. Some of the charges Edson is facing tonight: possession of a hoax explosive device, threats to commit a crime, disturbing the peace, and disorderly conduct. This week, the New York City Police Department has ended a program that once kept tabs on the city's Muslim population. Wyatt Spencer has details.
The NYPD says it was an attempt to create a complete picture of Muslim life in New York City. Now the department says it has officially disbanded its demographics unit.
It's an important first step towards ending the regime of massive dragnet surveillance of New York's Muslim community.
A media investigation going back to 2011 documented that NYPD used plainclothes officers to eavesdrop on people in bookstores, restaurants, and mosques, spying on Muslim neighborhoods, listening to sermons, and even photographing law-abiding residents.
Mosques should not be the subject of routine, massive surveillance.
That report sparked protest against the city led by then-Mayor Michael Bloomberg. It spurred debate over whether the department was infringing on civil rights. The unit has been largely inactive in the last 4 months since the current mayor Michael de Blasio took office. Today, the mayor's office released a statement saying, quote, "Our administration has promised the people of New York a police force that keeps our city safe, but that is also respectful and fair. This reform is a critical step forward in easing tensions between the police and the communities they serve so that our cops and our citizens can help one another go after the real bad guys." Wyatt Spencer, EWTN News Nightly.
Hundreds of Catholics prayerfully demonstrated outside the Colorado State Capitol in Denver this week. They're protesting a far-reaching reproductive health bill that would deregulate abortion clinics and shut down pro-life efforts in that state. Denver Archbishop Samuel Aquila spoke at the rally.
We are called, all of us, to be involved in the political process. And so I give you encouragement to go forward and to enter into the chambers themselves and listen to the debate.
There are 18 Democrats and 17 Republicans in the Colorado Senate. Senate Democrats postponed voting on the measure yesterday when one of the bill's key supporters went home sick during that rally. A baby lost and injured in the chaos of a bomb blast in Nigeria's capital has been reunited with her critically wounded mother. Today, 10-month-old Goodness Adams is with her mother, Gloria, recovering after Monday's bus explosion in Abuja. In the confusion after the blast, the baby and her mother were sent to different hospitals. The baby's father says he found Goodness after he heard her crying when she saw him in the hospital. At least 75 people were killed in Monday's explosion. The royal family is continuing its tour down under today. Prince William, Duchess Kate, and baby Prince George arrived in Sydney, Australia this morning. They were greeted by screaming fans and famous dignitaries before being whisked off to the city's opera house. Prince William also praised the country's efforts in the missing Malaysian plane search, saying Australia's role, quote, has earned respect in every quarter of the globe. Inmates from a Peru prison performed the musical Jesus Christ Superstar on Wednesday as part of Holy Week celebrations. An audience of prison authorities watched scenes from the Bible, including the Last Supper. Participants were decked out with props and elaborate costumes. They said the production was a way to release stress and express themselves. Peru is a largely Catholic nation with 3 in 4 Peruvians identifying as Catholics. Well, in less than 2 weeks, Popes John Paul II and John the 23rd will be officially canonized saints. In our Saints for Today series tonight, we turn our attention to the witness of John Paul II. Jason Calvi joins us with that story.
Brian, those who've seen John Paul II pray and often talk about feeling something really special, that's exactly the experience of the retired Archbishop of Washington, Cardinal Theodore McCarrick. Tonight he gives us a behind-the-scenes look into JP2's prayer life.
The most traveled pope in history, Blessed John Paul II visited 129 countries, including 7 visits to the United States. At his side in New Jersey back in 1995, the man in purple was then Newark Archbishop Theodore McCarrick.
It was wonderful. We had, in a teeming rain, we had 80,000 people in Giant Stadium, and they didn't make a move. They were so filled with enthusiasm.
After evening prayer inside the Newark Cathedral, Cardinal McCarrick felt the intense power of JP2's prayer.
He knelt there, and there was like a tent around him that you couldn't violate. I walked like 3 yards back. He knelt, and within 10 seconds, he wasn't with us. He was with the Lord. That depth of prayer I had never seen before.
The two first met in New York back in 1976. McCarrick joked about his vacation being cut short. The man who would become Pope remembered that joke for years.
He's holding my other hand so that I couldn't get away. And he said, "Did you ever get your vacation?" It was a man who never forgot people.
And we'll never forget him, as his name will soon be added to the list of saints. And Brian, I had the chance twice in my life to see JP2, once at World Youth Day, once in Rome, and both times it was really in my heart I felt a strong sense that I was in the presence of a saint.
I was blessed to cover his first visit to the U.S. in the late 70s in Chicago. We locked eyes, and I felt the same thing. Thank you, Jason. Well, a vintage car enthusiast is on the road to Rome for the canonization. He'll be driving a car formerly owned by John Paul II. Look at this soon-to-be saint-owned car. It's a 1958 FSO Warszava before he became Pope. This was the car that John Paul II drove. Marieke Schramm set off to the Eternal City yesterday with some fanfare, including a visit from former Polish President Lech Wałęsa. Schramm and a team of helpers have spent thousands of hours, and I'm sure plenty of money, restoring the car since he bought it 2 years ago. Well, he's not the only one in Poland preparing for John Paul II's canonization. The Pope of Freedom exhibition opened in Warsaw, Poland today, commemorating the soon-to-be saint. The museum shows various moments the country struggled and experienced hopelessness. The head of the Polish presidential office said, "The freedom of Poland is Pope John Paul II's greatest miracle." And just in time for these saints for today, the Holy See Press Office is releasing the 2 official images for their upcoming canonization. The 2 pictures from the Holy See, you can see the halos around the heads of these 2 popes. The halos are typically permitted only for those who are already canonized, But because this event is so soon, the faithful is already starting to put these on display. Coming up, Pope Francis is preparing for Holy Week services. We'll take you to Rome and tell you what's on his schedule. And two lucky kids take a spin in the famous Pope-mobile today in St. Peter's Square. We'll show you their ride of a lifetime after the break. Welcome back to EWTN News Nightly on this Wednesday of Holy Week. I'm Brian Patrick. How would you like to take a spin in the Pope-mobile? Well, two lucky kids got that chance today. A jovial Pope Francis hopped off his open-air car to greet a group of kids from Perugia. He then asked if any of them wanted to take a spin through the square. The Holy Father picked two lucky 11-year-olds. One of them said it was a ride of a lifetime. Francis's sense of humor was also on display later. He teased a Monsignor forced to cut short a reading because of a cough that he was getting old. Pope Francis spoke to the crowds filling St. Peter's Square about Christ's free embrace of suffering and death. We go now to Rome, where the Pope is preparing for Holy Week services. Our Rome correspondent Alan Holdren joins us. Alan, tell us about the Pope's schedule for the next few days.
That's right, Brian. Pope Francis begins these Holy Week celebrations and liturgies tomorrow. What starts is the Triduum, the Easter Triduum, and that goes for 3 days up until Easter. Now, this of course hasn't happened yet. The images that you're going to be seeing here are from last year. But his schedule consists of Holy Thursday. He's got two masses, one in the morning with priests of the Diocese of Rome, where they'll be blessing the oils to be used for different sacraments during the year. And then in the evening, he goes to a home for the disadvantaged, for the elderly, also for the handicapped, and he'll be washing the feet of these people there. Then on Good Friday, he's got a couple of events for the Lord's Passion, the death and the crucifixion and death of Christ. This is highlighted by a celebration at the Colosseum. This is the Stations of the Cross, where the Pope leads meditations there for thousands of people in a candlelight vigil. Then on Holy Saturday, there will be an event at St. Peter's Basilica in which new Christians, new Catholics are brought into the church. And then on Sunday, of course, is the Resurrection, Easter. This is the Pope's celebration in St. Peter's Square. He'll be leading Mass there, to be followed by his traditional blessing called the Urbi et Orbi, where he blesses the city and the world.
It is a beautiful and solemn time of the liturgical year. Of course, EWTN has full coverage. Alan Holdren, thank you, and we look forward to seeing you next week in Rome. Have a blessed Triduum and a happy Easter. As we approach Holy Thursday, a beautiful custom that dates back to the early days of the church is now wrapping up in Rome. This morning, pilgrims attended Mass at St. Mary Major, the last stop in the Station Church pilgrimage. That tradition brings the faithful to different churches throughout Lent, following the footsteps of the saints and martyrs. English-speaking pilgrims reflected on the experience as they end their Lenten journey.
As an American, it's a chance for me to appreciate the Church Universal, not only throughout the world, but also throughout time. Pilgrims have been making this pilgrimage for centuries now, and not only English-speaking pilgrimages today.
I was really blessed this year. I served as one of the coordinators of the station churches, and I was actually able to make all of them.
The chance to visit all these churches has been amazing because a lot of the churches are closed, and so you can't get into them, but at this opportunity you go, and then you're united in the sole purpose of the church, which is the sacrifice of the Holy Mass.
The Pontifical North American College, where American seminarians study, organizes this pilgrimage. Up next, a nearly complete T-Rex skeleton arrives at its new home in the Smithsonian Dinosaur Hall here in Washington. And we'll show you a big, bold Easter egg featuring the colors of the rainbow, created by the pastry chef of a luxury Paris hotel. Thanks so much for being with us on this Wednesday evening on EWTN News Nightly, and we're joined by our regular contributor Ashley McGuire of the Catholic Association. I want to talk about some of the stories that we've been covering in the past few weeks and also look ahead to next week. Ashley, it sounds like the church is facing another hearing at the UN over clergy sex abuse. What do you make of this investigation?
Well, you know, we first saw this about a month ago when a different commission came out with an absolutely ridiculous report that ignored the last 10 years of progress the church has made on this front, and then did all sorts of things like told the church to change its canon laws on a host of issues. So the church is really being bullied, but I think they're taking the high road. They've been very cooperative and very respectful, and I think it's because they respect the United Nations and want to remain a positive contributing member of that entity.
You would think, though, that at some point it would be recognized how the church has addressed these issues.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, the church is now so strong on this issue, on protecting children, that it's being modeled by other governments, by other institutions and entities that want to implement the same types of protections that the church has done. It's now the safest place for a child in the world.
Well, that hearing in May is being conducted by a committee that deals with torture. That's pretty weird.
No, it's very aggressive, it's bullying. They're going to try to accuse the church of torturing, of systematically torturing people. And as we know, the church has been the leader of protecting children, of doing things to educate children, feed children, help children get access to good health care. So I think that with Francis at the helm, people are going to see that the United Nations is being a giant bully.
Let's turn to equal pay for equal women. This is a debate that has resurfaced recently. Equal pay for women. You're a working mom. How do you see this?
You know, whenever the government tries to mandate these sorts of things, it just doesn't go over well. I do think it's important to recognize what women are looking for in the workplace, but when you do that, you see that every single poll or statistic shows what women want is flexibility. And I have a wonderful setup where I have that flexibility. A new study just came out that found that is the biggest priority for millennial women. So, and that really does sort of contribute, I think, to what people are calling pay inequity, that women are willing to take a little bit of a cost when it comes to pay in order to prioritize their lives around their families. So I think I'd prefer to see the conversation go in that direction, which is the direction women are looking to see it go.
How do you think it can be led in that direction?
Well, I think, for one, it would be great to see some female members of Congress step up and lead the conversation in that direction and find out what are ways that we can use the law to help women see that sort of flexibility that they're looking for, maybe incentivizing companies. You know, there's some companies that offer wonderful benefits like flex time, and women are really benefiting from that, and also women leaders in the workplace.
Let's turn to next week, the canonizations of John Paul II and John the 23rd. As a recent convert, how do you see all this ceremony and pomp and just wonderful celebration?
You know, I was at the conclave a year ago in March, and, you know, it's sort of a similar amount of pomp and circumstance, and it's very exciting. I mean, there's a reason that millions of people tuned in to watch that, and I think they're expecting, you know, somewhere around 5 million people to be in Rome, a record crowd, and even more to watch. So I think this is a very positive time for the church. We're seeing two men who were sort of bookends of the Second Vatican Council honored for the role they played in bringing the church into the 20th and 21st century.
Well, we're grateful that we are able to be there as EWTN News Nightly to bring this coverage to our whole EWTN family. Very grateful that you could join us this evening.
Thank you.
Ashley McGuire, thanks. Well, women in the U.S. Army are getting ready to take more leadership positions. Last November, the Army officially began assigning female officers to lead the cannon platoons and plans to open other combat jobs. Susie Pinto has the story.
So make sure.
At Fort Bragg, North Carolina, Kelly Requa represents the changing face of combat.
Anybody can be a platoon leader. Anybody can be a crew member as long as you can do the job.
A year since the military said women could serve in combat, she's breaking ground.
I mean, I think it's a good job.
At this military post, she's among the first female platoon leaders, this day watching artillerymen train for combat.
We're a unit that likes to pride ourselves on embracing diversity. There was no discussion really at all. Once you got there, the discussion stopped.
The U.S. military has until January 2016 to open all combat jobs to women, or explain why some must remain closed. Recently at Fort Stewart, Georgia, scientists studied the physical demands of combat, measuring strength, endurance, and power. The goal? Set benchmarks, irrespective of gender.
We want the best talent that we can possibly get. And these are exactly the same standards that we expect soldiers in basic training and in units to perform to each and every day.
For the women, integration means more pressure and scrutiny. For the men, it means more sexual assault prevention and awareness training. A renewed focus on respect, team building, and moral character.
The spirit of the commander is pretty much the spirit of the battery.
In North Carolina, Requa welcomes the challenge.
We're all a lot of pressure to just do well. So I don't feel like there's any more on me than there is on everyone else.
Eager to see things change and be there on the front lines of history. Susie Pinto, EWTN News Nightly.
Thank you, Susie. We're excited about this in D.C. A nearly complete Tyrannosaurus Rex is now in its new home at the Smithsonian here in Washington. This week, museum directors unveiled what is called MOR55, better known as the nation's T-Rex. It's one of the first ones discovered with an intact arm. Kathy and Tom Wankel discovered the bones in Montana in 1988.
We were just looking for a bone. We would have been thrilled with a bone, but what we came across was probably about this much sticking out of the bank, and you could see the bone marrow on it.
The bones are estimated to be around 65 million years old. If you come to D.C. and want to see it, it's in the Smithsonian Dinosaur Hall. I'm taking my grandson Sam there tomorrow. He's visiting from Milwaukee. Well, when it comes to Easter eggs, one of the biggest and boldest is center stage in a French hotel. Take a look at this rainbow-colored egg. It was created by the pastry chef at the Shangri-La Paris Hotel. Every year, he works hard to design and create a unique Easter chocolate. You see, in France, the chocolate industry is very competitive, which is why you'll find lots of different chocolate creations around Easter. Of course, before Easter comes the Sacred Triduum. Our team will be off for the next couple of days as EWTN brings you special coverage of these sacred days on the liturgical calendar. From our family to yours, a blessed Triduum and happy Easter. We're back here after Easter with EWTN News Nightly 5 nights a week, beginning with our special coverage from Rome leading up to the canonizations of Blesseds John Paul II and John the 23rd on Divine Mercy Sunday. Until then, be sure to like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter, and catch us again on EWTN's YouTube page. For all of us here at EWTN News Nightly, I'm Brian Patrick. Thank you for watching tonight. Good night and God bless you.